Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to dupe the newest Natasha Denona Glam face palette, and I'm going to dupe both the palettes, the light version as well as the deep version, with a single eyeshadow palette that I have in my collection. So if you guys are interested, let's begin. I'm also going to create this eye look using the dupe shadows that dupe the Natasha Denona's dark palette. Let's start off with the details of the palette. So this Natasha Denona's Glam face palette consists of 2 face products and 5 neutral eyeshadows. Out of the 5 eyeshadows, she has 3 mattes and 2 shimmers, and along with that she has 1 cream blush and 1 highlighter shade in each of the palettes. Now this face palette retails at $59, which is not cheap at all if you ask me. But am I interested? I was very interested. But when I digged into my collection, I could find all of the eyeshadows from the light palette as well as the deep palette in one eyeshadow palette, and that was Too Faced Natural Notes palette. So I thought sharing it with you guys because you guys seem to like my dupe videos a lot. So we're gonna live swatch everything. I'll show you the close-up swatches at the end of the video too. So let's start off with the light palette. So we're gonna start from left to right and start duping the shades. So the first shadow is being duped by the shade which is called Shimmering Pearl, and this is defined as a sparkling metallic universal light nude shade. I mean, very important for your inner corners, for your lid shade. It's a very champagne metallic shade, and I mean, cannot complain about that. So next is the transitioning shade, which is duped by the shade which is called Warm Rose in the palette, and this is defined as a matte light medium nude pink shade. I'm gonna swatch that. The light palette is more pink leaning and the deep palette is more like neutral brown leaning. So that would be the second shade. The next shade in the palette is duped by the shade called Cocoa, and the shade is defined as a matte medium nude shade. And this is a beautiful shade. Now this is the shade that is like repeated in both the palettes and very necessary, I would say. This is like the transitioning shade in the dark palette. So that's how this shade looks. The next shade in the palette is duped by the shade which is called Rose Gold, and this is defined as a sparkling metallic medium rose gold nude shade, and this is a rose gold shade in a metallic shade. So I thought it would completely justify, and that's how it looks. And the last shade in the palette is duped by the shade called Truffle, and this is defined as the smoke shade, which is a dark matte neutral brown shade. And I love to apply this as like a outer corner shade, and it's beautiful. I mean, look at that. All of these shades go so well together. Cannot complain about that at all. Now let's talk about the face powders in the palette. So they have a cream blush as well as highlighter. The highlighter is defined as a high shine light champagne shade. I cannot be more precise. I feel like the e.l.f. Bite Size in the shade Lychee would complement that so well, but both of these are in the powder format. So if you're looking for the powder format, I feel just go with Lychee and you would be all set. But if you want to dupe that with the cream blush, I would say go with the e.l.f. Putty Blush in the shade Tahiti. So I'm going to swatch both the shades. First I'll go with the highlighter, and this is a light champagne shade. Beautiful on the face. I mean, it's just stunning on the face. I don't know how much it can capture in the camera, but it is a beautiful highlighter. It reflects very nicely on the face. Cannot complain at all. And it goes with those pinky tones too. Now let's talk about the cream blush, and the cream blush is defined as a matte neutral pink shade, and that's exactly what this Tahiti is all about. It's a matte neutral pink shade, and this texture is also that it's a creamy blush, but it can set to a powder format, and that is how the blush looks. So this would be duping the light version of the Natasha Denona's Glam palette. Take a screenshot if you want. Dupe it if you have these shades already in your collection. I mean, I had so much fun duping this. Cannot even emphasize. Now let's move on to the darker version of this palette. Now the first shade in the dark palette is duped by the shade called Sparkling Sable from the Too Faced Natural Notes palette, and this is defined as a sparkling metallic medium dark rosewood brown shade, and that's exactly what that shade is. I absolutely love that shade. Cannot even emphasize enough. I mean, look at that. Oh my god, that's stunning. So that's the first shade. The second shade in the palette is duped by the shade which is called Maple in the palette, and this is defined as a matte medium warm brown shade. And this is the second shade, and this is basically their transition shade. The third shade in the palette is duped by this shade which is called Truffle, and this is defined as a matte deep neutral brown shade, same as the Smoke Shadow in the light palette. So I'm gonna swatch this right next to it. Beautiful. I mean, I love it. Stunning. And this is what I have like to deepen out my crease in the outer corners. The next shade in the palette is duped by the shade called Sparkling Sand, and this is their inner corner shade, and this is defined as a sparkling metallic light medium warm taupe shade. So let me swatch this for you. And this is like one swipe swatch. I love the pigmentation of the palette. Cannot complain at all. And the last shade in the palette is duped by the shade called Cocoa, and this is defined as the matte medium dark mahogany shade. And those are the eyeshadows in the Glam palette in the darker version, duped for you guys. Beautiful, stunning color story. I love it. I absolutely love it. You can definitely go like daytime glam look to like nighttime smoky looks. Stunning. Okay, now let's talk about the highlighter and the cream blush in this palette. The highlighter that I'm going to dupe this with is from the Natasha Denona actually face palette. You can use any medium champagne shade, and that is what exactly it is. And I'm duping it with this shade. I don't know what's the name of the shade. It's called Glow Extreme here in this palette. So I'm going to take that shade. It is a powder formula as in the Glam palette. And this is what I have as my highlighter. And this is one swatch. So that's the highlighter shade. You can see the glow that it gives when I like move my hand. It's a very beautiful highlighter. This is what I have on my cheeks. You can see the glowiness, the blindingness. Now let's move on to the cream blush, and this is defined as a matte medium dusty rose shade, and this is an exact dupe to this one, and this is from LYS Beauty, and the shade is called Confident. I absolutely love this blush. This is what I have on my cheeks today, and let me swatch it for you guys. It's a beautiful matte coral shade. Love it. And this is the Natasha Denona's Glam Face Palette in the dark version. Now let me give you a close-up of all the swatches of the light palette as well as dark palette all together, so that you guys can make a decision which one you like the most. Actually, if you do have this palette, you have the entire collection in your hands already. And now let's move on to how to recreate this eye look, which is actually inspired by the model that is there on the Natasha Denona's website, which is featuring their dark palette. So I just recreated the look for you guys, and I hope that you guys like it. So let's move on to the tutorial. Let's begin. I'm going to take the shade Maple from the palette, and I'm going to run that all across the crease. And I'm duplicating the look that is created on the Natasha Denona's website using the dark palette, so that we have like a clear picture of whether we can achieve the same look with these shades or not. And I love doing like recreating the looks, so yeah, win-win situation for me. I'm going to take the same thing on my lower lash line too. So once we have that all blown out, I'm going to take the shade called Cocoa from the palette. And I'm also going to take that on my outer corner of the eye and also sweep it on the crease. We're building up the crease just so that we get like that almond shape. I'm going to keep this shade a little lower than the shade which is called Maple. I'm going to take the same shade on my lower lash line. Now I'm going to take this shade which is called Truffle from the palette, and I'm going to put that right on my outer corners and on my lash line. Again, we're going to just deepen up the eye, and I'm going to take this on my crease too, but definitely lower than the shade which is called Cocoa. And then just buff it out with the other shades. And I'm going with like a very light circular motions to buff this deep shade in the crease. Natasha Denona is like known for that almond shape eye. And it's going to be a little tough for me because I have round eyes, but I'm going to try and recreate the same look. Now just so that there is a blank space, I'm going to take any concealer. I have my CoverGirl True Blend concealer. I'm going to take that and just try and clean up the inner third of the eye. Nothing major, I'm taking like a very light amount and just creating like that negative space there. I'm just going to take the same blending brush with no additional product and just buff out the outer edges just so that the blend is clean. Nothing much, just to get like a smooth blend. Now I'm going to take the shade called Sparkling Sable from the palette, and I'm going to buff that on my outer edges of the eye. It's a beautiful chocolatey brown shade. Perfect to blend for like a smoky eye. It's just perfect. And finally, I'm going to take this shade which is called Sparkling Sand from the palette, and I'm going to put that in the complete negative space that we created and just blend it out with that chocolatey brown shade that we applied in the outer corners. Beautiful, love it. I'm going to take that same shade and also apply that on my inner corners. Now I'm just going to tightline my eyes with some black eyeliner, and I'm going to use my Essence black liner, and I'll get right back. Now to complete my lower lash line, I'm just going to mix these two shades, Maple and Cocoa, together. I'm just going to buff that out on my lower lash line. Okay, so that's how the eyes have turned out. I finished off my eyes with some lashes and I applied Glamnetic lashes, and this is in the style Venus. So that's how the eyes are turned out. Now let's move on to the blush. Now the cream blush that is there in the Deep palette is definitely more on like, I would say more on like a rusty mahogany side. And I thought the perfect blush to dupe that is from LYS, and this is the shade Confident. It's exactly the same shade that I'm seeing in the swatch. So I could not help myself but use this blush. So I'm going to take my blush brush and just dip it into that. And I'm going to concentrate that on like the temples and just buff it out to my bronzer, so that I get the same effect. It just looks the same, guys. So if you do have this blush, or if you were like interested in that blush in particular, go for the LYS Confident and you'll be happy with it. Look at that. I love it. And on the website, this blush is defined like a matte dusty coral shade. And I cannot agree more to this shade. I mean, I love it. I absolutely love how everything ties together. So in love with this look. Now let's move on to the highlighter that is in the palette. The highlighter is called the Star Glow and it is defined as a high shine medium champagne shade. And I thought, I have a Natasha Denona face palette and that shade in that palette looks exactly like this. So I'm going to use this shade, but yeah, feel free to use any highlighter with like a medium champagne shade. But I think this is definitely going to complement this look so well. And this shade exactly looks the same from the Natasha Denona New Glam face palette. So I'm going to just buff that in my temples. Cannot deny her like highlighters are gorgeous. And I got this palette like for 50% off and I cannot regret it at all. And the blush that I use from LYS is very similar in the quality also, like the texture feels very similar to this cream blush. So I feel that the textures are also very similar. I'm going to take the same shade, buff it out on the nose and a little on the cupid's bow. So guys, that's my final look. I'll leave the picture of the model that is represented on the Natasha Denona's website somewhere on the screen so that you guys can compare it for yourself. Whether I could achieve a similar look by using the Too Faced Natural Nudes palette or not. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did like it, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!